The silence in the briefing room was deafening. 37 hardened military officers sat frozen as they watched a petite woman in dress blues calmly reach into her folder and slide a single photograph across the mahogany table. The image landed face up in front of General Morrison, whose face had gone pale moments earlier when he'd questioned her combat record with a dismissive smirk. "That's target number 43, she said quietly, her voice steady as steel. "Confirmed kill, 847 meters, single shot, Helmand Province." The Taliban commander who'd been orchestrating attacks on school buses filled with children. The room remained dead silent. Not a single cough, not the rustle of papers, not even the sound of breathing seemed to penetrate the tension that had suddenly filled the space. General Morrison stared at the photograph, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning mist. "Would you like to see the other 42, sir?" she asked, her tone respectful, but carrying an edge that could cut through armor plating. This was the moment that would define not just her career, but reshape how an entire generation of military leaders viewed the women warriors among their ranks. But to understand how a small-town girl from Nebraska became one of the most lethal snipers in military history, and how she came to shut down a two-star general with nothing but the truth, we need to go back to where it all began. The story of Staff Sergeant Maria Elena Vasquez didn't start in the mountains of Afghanistan or the deserts of Iraq. It started in a grain elevator in a town so small it didn't even have a stoplight, where a 12-year-old girl with steady hands and keen eyes first learned that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with fists, but with precision, patience, and the unwavering commitment to prove that strength comes in many forms. This is her story. Maria Elena Vasquez grew up in Clearwater, Nebraska, population 847, where the biggest excitement usually came from the annual Corn Festival and Friday night football games. Her father, Carlos, worked the night shift at the grain elevator, while her mother, Sarah, taught third grade at the local elementary school. Maria was the middle child of three, sandwiched between her older brother Diego and younger sister Carmen, and from an early age, it was clear she was different from other kids her age. While most 12-year-olds in Clearwater spent their summers swimming at the municipal pool or riding bikes through the endless cornfields, Maria found herself drawn to her grandfather's old barn on the outskirts of town. Roberto Vasquez had served in Vietnam as a Marine sniper, though he rarely talked about his experiences overseas. The barn housed his workshop where he spent his retirement years restoring antique firearms and teaching neighborhood kids about gun safety and marksmanship. Maria's first introduction to shooting came on a sweltering July morning when her grandfather noticed her watching him clean an old .22 rifle through the barn window. She'd been observing him for weeks, fascinated by the methodical precision with which he handled each component, the way he cleaned every part until it gleamed, and the almost meditative focus he brought to the task. "You want to learn, Mija?" Roberto asked without looking up from his work. Maria nodded eagerly, and that afternoon, she fired her first shot at a paper target nailed to a hay bale 30 feet away. The bullet struck dead center of the bullseye, and Roberto raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Beginner's luck," he murmured, but when Maria proceeded to place the next 9 shots in a tight grouping around the center, he realized he was witnessing something special. Over the following months, Roberto became Maria's unofficial mentor, teaching her not just about marksmanship, but about discipline, patience, and respect for the power she held in her hands. He taught her to control her breathing, to find her natural point of aim, and, most importantly, to understand that accurate shooting was as much mental as it was physical. "The rifle doesn't make the shot," he would tell her as she practiced. "The mind makes the shot. The rifle is just the tool." Maria absorbed every lesson with an intensity that sometimes concerned her parents. While her siblings were content with typical teenage activities, Maria spent every free moment at the range her grandfather had set up behind the barn. She read every book about marksmanship she could find at the library, studied ballistics tables until she could recite them from memory, and practiced dry-firing exercises in her bedroom until her parents worried she was becoming obsessed. Her natural talent was undeniable. By age 14, she was regularly out shooting adults at the county shooting competitions, earning trophies that lined her bedroom shelves and drawing attention from high school shooting coaches throughout the region. But it wasn't just her accuracy that impressed people. It was her composure under pressure, her ability to remain calm and focused even when dozens of people were watching her every move. The first real test of Maria's abilities came during her sophomore year of high school. The Nebraska State High School Shooting Championship was being held in Lincoln, and Clearwater High's newly formed shooting team had qualified for the competition. Maria was the only female shooter on the team, and several of the other schools made no attempt to hide their skepticism about her presence. Looks like Clearwater brought their mascot instead of a real shooter, she overheard one coach tell another as the teams gathered for the opening ceremony. The comment stung, but Maria had learned from her grandfather that the best response to doubt was performance, not words. The competition consisted of 3 stages: precision shooting at known distances, rapid fire at multiple targets, and a stress shoot where competitors had to engage targets while being timed and subjected to various distractions. Maria advanced through the first 2 stages with ease, posting scores that put her in second place overall heading into the final event. The stress shoot was where many competitors faltered. The course required shooters to engage 12 targets at varying distances while navigating obstacles, with points deducted for misses and time penalties for slow completion. Added pressure came from air horns, strobe lights, and other distractions designed to simulate battlefield conditions. As Maria stepped up to the firing line for her turn, she could hear whispered conversations from the other teams. Some were offering odds on whether she'd even finish the course, while others speculated about how badly the pressure would get to her. She blocked out the noise, focused on her breathing, and waited for the start signal. When the buzzer sounded, Maria moved through the course with a fluid precision that silenced her critics. Each shot was deliberate and accurate, each movement economical and purposeful. She engaged targets from prone positions, from behind barricades, and while moving between shooting stations. When the final buzzer sounded, she had achieved a perfect score in record time. The range fell silent as the scorekeeper announced the results. Maria had not only won the individual championship, but her performance had lifted Clearwater High to the team title as well. As she stood on the podium accepting her medal, she noticed several college scouts in the audience taking notes and speaking quietly among themselves. Word of Maria's performance spread quickly through the competitive shooting community. Within weeks, she was receiving recruiting letters from colleges with prestigious shooting programs, offers to attend advanced marksmanship camps, and invitations to compete in national junior competitions. But the most significant contact came from an unexpected source. Sergeant First Class David Chun from the Army National Guard's recruiting office in Grand Island called the Vasquez home on a Tuesday evening in March. He'd heard about Maria's shooting abilities and wanted to discuss opportunities for her in the military. The conversation lasted over an hour, with Sergeant Chun explaining various military occupational specialties that could utilize her talents. "Have you ever considered military service?" he asked during their conversation. Maria admitted she had, particularly after learning about her grandfather's experiences in Vietnam and researching the role of military snipers in modern warfare. "There's a place for someone with your skills," Sergeant Chun continued. "But I want you to understand that military service, especially in combat roles, requires more than just shooting ability. It requires mental toughness, physical fitness, and the ability to make life and death decisions under extreme pressure." Over the following weeks, Maria found herself thinking constantly about the possibility of military service. She researched different branches, studied military history, and had long conversations with her grandfather about what it really meant to serve in combat. Roberto was supportive but cautious, sharing stories about the psychological challenges he'd faced during and after his tour in Vietnam. "The taking of a life is not something to be taken lightly, Mija," he told her one evening as they cleaned rifles in his workshop. "It changes you in ways you can't imagine. You need to be sure you're prepared for that responsibility." As Maria's junior year progressed, her academic performance remained strong, while her shooting accomplishments continued to accumulate. She won state championships in multiple disciplines, set new records at national competitions, and caught the attention of Olympic development coaches. But the conversation with Sergeant Chun had planted a seed that continued to grow. The turning point came during her senior year when a documentary about female military snipers aired on television. Maria watched, fascinated, as the program profiled several women who had served in Iraq and Afghanistan in various combat roles. These women spoke about the challenges they'd faced, not just from the enemy, but from skeptical colleagues who doubted their abilities based on their gender. One interview particularly resonated with Maria. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Morrison, a sniper with the Marine Corps, spoke about a mission where she'd eliminated a high-value target while protecting a convoy of medical personnel. People see a small woman, and they make assumptions, Morrison said. But bullets don't care about gender. Accuracy doesn't care about gender. Mission success doesn't care about gender. That night, Maria made her decision. Despite offers from several top universities and the possibility of pursuing Olympic competition, she knew her path lay elsewhere. The next morning, she called Sergeant Chun and told him she wanted to enlist in the Army with a guaranteed slot in the Military Police Corps, which would position her for eventual sniper training. Her parents were initially hesitant, worried about their daughter's safety and the challenges she might face as a woman in what was still largely a male-dominated field. But they had watched Maria's determination and focus for years, and they ultimately supported her decision. Roberto was proud, but emotional when Maria told him about her choice. "You have the skills, Mija," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But more importantly, you have the heart. That's what will keep you alive and bring you home." As Maria's high school graduation approached, she continued her training with renewed intensity. She added physical conditioning to her routine, studied military tactics and strategy, and prepared mentally for the challenges that lay ahead. Her grandfather introduced her to other veterans in the area, and she listened to their stories, absorbing lessons about leadership, teamwork, and the realities of military life. The night before she left for basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, Maria sat in her grandfather's workshop one last time. The barn was quiet except for the sound of cicadas outside and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Roberto handed her a small wooden box containing a compass that had belonged to his father, who had served in World War II. "3 generations of soldiers," he said simply. "You'll be the first to serve as a sniper, but you carry the honor of all who came before." Maria carefully placed the compass in her duffel bag, along with photos of her family and a small notebook where she'd written down every piece of advice her grandfather had given her over the years. As she prepared to leave the only home she'd ever known, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about the journey ahead. The girl who had first picked up a rifle in a dusty barn in Nebraska was about to become something the world had rarely seen. A female sniper who would challenge every assumption about warfare, gender, and what it meant to serve with honor. But first, she had to survive the crucible that would forge her into a soldier and prove to herself and everyone around her that her childhood dreams could become deadly reality on the world's most dangerous battlefields. Basic training at Fort Leonard would hit Maria like a hurricane. The Missouri heat was oppressive, the drill sergeants were relentless, and the physical demands pushed her body to its absolute limits. But while many of her fellow recruits struggled with the military's rigid structure and demanding schedule, Maria found herself adapting quickly to the disciplined environment. The shooting portions of basic training were almost laughably easy for her. While other recruits spent hours trying to qualify with their M16 rifles, Maria consistently scored expert marksman on her first attempt. Her drill sergeant, Staff Sergeant Williams, initially suspected she'd had prior military training and questioned her extensively about her background. "No military experience, Sergeant," Maria replied during one of these interrogations. "Just grew up shooting with my grandfather." Staff Sergeant Williams studied her test scores and shook his head in amazement. Vasquez, I've been training soldiers for 12 years, and I've never seen a recruit shoot like you do. What's your plan for after basic? When Maria explained her goal of becoming a military sniper, Williams nodded approvingly. You've got the skills for it, no doubt. But you're going to face challenges that have nothing to do with shooting. This is still a man's world in many ways, and some people aren't going to want to accept that a woman can do this job. Williams proved to be more prophetic than either of them realized at the time. After graduating from basic training near the top of her class, Maria reported to Fort McClellan, Alabama, for military police training. Here, she encountered her first real taste of the skepticism and occasional hostility she would face throughout her career. Military police training was more intensive than basic training, with a focus on law enforcement procedures, combat tactics, and weapons proficiency. Maria excelled in most areas, but it was during combat training exercises that she first encountered serious resistance from some of her male colleagues. Private First Class Jake Morrison, a stocky former college football player from Texas, made no secret of his belief that women didn't belong in combat roles. This isn't a game, he told Maria during a break between training exercises. When bullets start flying for real, you're going to freeze up or panic, and you're going to get people killed. Morrison's comments reflected attitudes that were still common in the military during the early 2000s. Despite policy changes that had opened more roles to women, cultural acceptance was lagging behind official regulations. Many male soldiers had genuine concerns about unit cohesion and combat effectiveness, while others simply couldn't reconcile their traditional views about gender roles with the reality of women in uniform. Maria chose not to engage with Morrison's provocations directly. Instead, she let her performance speak for itself. During live-fire exercises, she consistently outperformed the majority of her classmates. In tactical scenarios, she demonstrated the same calm focus under pressure that had served her well in competitive shooting. When the class participated in a stress-inducing combat simulation, Maria's heart rate and stress indicators remained remarkably stable while others showed signs of panic or confusion. The breakthrough moment came during the final field training exercise. The scenario involved a simulated convoy ambush where students had to respond to enemy contact while protecting civilian role players. Maria was assigned as the driver of the lead vehicle, a role that Morrison had lobbied for, claiming that women couldn't handle the stress of being in the most dangerous position. When the exercise began, Maria's convoy came under simulated fire from multiple directions. Role players acting as enemy combatants engaged them with blank ammunition and training devices designed to create realistic combat stress. Other students in similar exercises had made tactical errors under pressure, taking too long to respond or making poor decisions that resulted in simulated casualties. Maria's response was textbook perfect. She immediately maneuvered her vehicle to cover, established communication with her team, and began engaging targets with precision fire that eliminated threats while avoiding civilian casualties. When one of her teammates was designated as wounded, she provided covering fire that allowed medics to reach him safely. The entire exercise was completed without a single friendly casualty, earning praise from instructors who noted they had rarely seen such composure from a new soldier. After the exercise, Morrison approached Maria as she cleaned her weapon. His earlier hostility was gone, replaced by grudging respect. "I was wrong about you," he admitted quietly. "You handled that better than most of us did." The acknowledgement meant more to Maria than Morrison probably realized. She wasn't seeking approval or validation from her peers, but she understood that earning their respect was crucial for her long-term success in the military. Combat arms fields were still predominantly male, and she would need allies and advocates to achieve her goal of becoming a sniper. Upon graduating from military police school, Maria was assigned to the 503rd Military Police Battalion at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Fort Bragg was home to the 82nd Airborne Division and various special operations units, creating an environment where combat readiness was taken very seriously. Here, Maria would spend 2 years honing her skills and building the experience necessary to apply for sniper training. Her first deployment came sooner than expected. In 2003, the 503rd MP Battalion received orders to deploy to Iraq as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Maria would be heading to war less than 2 years after graduating high school, a prospect that both excited and sobered her. The conflict in Iraq was intensifying, and military police units were facing combat situations that went far beyond traditional law enforcement roles. The deployment preparation period was intense. Maria and her unit underwent additional combat training, urban warfare scenarios, and cultural awareness classes about Iraq and the Middle East. During weapons training, Maria's exceptional marksmanship abilities caught the attention of Captain Sarah Mitchell, the company commander who would be leading their unit overseas. "Vasquez, I've been reviewing your training records," Captain Mitchell said during a one-on-one meeting. "Your shooting scores are off the charts, and your instructors have nothing but positive things to say about your performance under pressure. Have you given any thought to advanced training opportunities?" Maria explained her ultimate goal of becoming a sniper, and Captain Mitchell nodded thoughtfully. "There aren't many slots available, especially for women, but your scores suggest you might have what it takes. Focus on performing well during this deployment, and I'll see what doors I can help open for you." The conversation gave Maria renewed motivation as she prepared for her first combat deployment. She spent additional hours at the range, perfected her urban combat tactics, and studied everything she could find about the situation in Iraq. She also wrote long letters to her grandfather, sharing her experiences and asking for advice about preparing mentally for combat. Roberto's responses were filled with practical wisdom. "Remember, Mija, that courage isn't the absence of fear," he wrote in one letter. "Courage is doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and never forget that your first responsibility is to bring yourself and your teammates home safely." The flight to Iraq was Maria's first time leaving the United States. As the transport plane crossed over the Atlantic, she looked around at her fellow soldiers and thought about how much her life had changed in such a short time. Less than 3 years earlier, she had been a high school student in rural Nebraska. Now she was heading to war as a trained soldier, carrying weapons and responsibilities that would have been unimaginable to her younger self. The unit's arrival at Forward Operating Base Liberty near Baghdad was a shock to the system. The heat was overwhelming, the dust got into everything, and the constant threat of incoming mortar rounds or rocket attacks created a level of stress that no training exercise could fully replicate. Maria found herself drawing on every lesson her grandfather had taught her about mental toughness and emotional control. Her first mission came 3 days after arrival. The unit was tasked with escorting a convoy of supply vehicles from the base to a smaller outpost near the Baghdad airport. Intelligence reports indicated that insurgent activity in the area had increased recently, but the mission was considered routine enough for newer soldiers to participate. Maria was assigned as the gunner on the lead vehicle, operating a mounted M249 light machine gun from the truck's turret. As the convoy departed the relative safety of the base and entered Baghdad's chaotic streets, she felt her senses heighten and her training kick in. Every doorway, every rooftop, every pile of debris along the roadside became a potential threat to be assessed and monitored. The ambush came at a traffic circle about halfway to their destination. A roadside bomb exploded near the third vehicle in the convoy, and small arms fire immediately erupted from buildings on both sides of the street. The convoy came under attack from multiple directions, with insurgents using hit-and-run tactics designed to create maximum confusion and casualties. Maria's response was immediate and precise. While other soldiers were still trying to identify where the enemy fire was coming from, she had already spotted muzzle flashes from a second-story window about 200 meters away. Her return fire was accurate and disciplined, forcing the insurgents to abandon their position and relocate. When a second group of attackers emerged from an alley to the convoy's right flank, Maria shifted her aim and engaged them with controlled bursts that suppressed their advance and allowed other members of her unit to maneuver to better defensive positions. Throughout the firefight, which lasted approximately 8 minutes, she demonstrated the same calm focus that had characterized her competitive shooting back in Nebraska. After the attack was repelled and the convoy reached its destination safely, Captain Mitchell pulled Maria aside for a debrief. "Outstanding job out there, Vasquez," she said. "Your fire discipline and accuracy under pressure probably saved lives today. I'm putting you in for a commendation, and I'm also going to contact some people about fast-tracking your application for sniper training." That night, as Maria cleaned her weapons and reflected on her first combat experience, she realized that something fundamental had changed inside her. The theoretical knowledge she'd gained in training had been replaced by practical experience, and she understood that she had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. She was no longer just a soldier in training. She was a combat veteran who had proven herself under fire. Over the following months, Maria's reputation continued to grow. She participated in dozens of combat missions, consistently demonstrating exceptional marksmanship and tactical awareness. Her ability to remain calm under pressure made her a valuable asset in urban combat situations where split-second decisions could mean the difference between mission success and friendly casualties. The pivotal moment in her military career came during a mission to secure a suspected insurgent safe house in a densely populated area of Baghdad. Intelligence indicated that a high-value target was using the building to coordinate attacks against coalition forces. The mission required careful planning to minimize civilian casualties while ensuring that the target couldn't escape. Maria was positioned as Overwatch, responsible for covering the assault team from a rooftop approximately 400 meters from the target building. Her job was to monitor potential escape routes and provide supporting fire if the assault team encountered resistance. What happened next would change the trajectory of her entire career and establish her reputation as one of the most effective combat soldiers in her unit. The mission began at 0300 hours on a moonless night in October 2004. Maria had been positioned on the rooftop for over 2 hours, scanning the target building through her rifle scope and monitoring radio communication from the assault team. The building was a 3-story concrete structure in a neighborhood known for harboring insurgent sympathizers, and intelligence suggested that their target, a bomb maker responsible for several recent attacks, was inside. As the assault team moved into position, Maria noticed movement on the target building's roof. Through her scope, she could see a figure in dark clothing setting up what appeared to be a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, preparing to engage the approaching soldiers. The range was 387 meters, requiring her to account for wind, elevation, and the fact that she would be shooting in near-complete darkness. "Overwatch to Alpha Team," she whispered in her radio. "I have eyes on enemy combatant with RPG on target building roof, preparing to engage your position." "Alpha Team to Overwatch," came a reply from Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the assault team leader. "Take the shot if you have it. We're 2 minutes out from breach." Maria steadied her breathing and adjusted her scope for the range and conditions. The figure on the roof was partially concealed behind a low wall, presenting only a small target area. A miss could alert other insurgents in the building and compromise the entire mission. A hit would eliminate an immediate threat to her teammates. She took the shot. The bullet struck the insurgent center mass, and he dropped immediately. The suppressed rifles report was barely audible from the assault team's position, and the mission continued without the target building's occupants realizing they were under attack. The assault team successfully captured their primary target and recovered a cache of bomb-making materials, all without a single friendly casualty. During the post-mission debrief, Colonel James Patterson, the battalion commander, made a point of addressing Maria directly. "Outstanding shooting, Vasquez. That was a textbook example of precision marksmanship under combat conditions. I'm recommending you for immediate transfer to sniper training." The recommendation carried significant weight coming from a battalion commander, and within weeks, Maria received orders to report to the Army Marksmanship Unit at Fort Benning, Georgia, for evaluation and potential selection for the Special Operations Target Interdiction course. This was the Army's premier sniper training program, and Acceptance was extremely competitive even for male candidates. Maria's deployment to Iraq ended in February 2005, and she returned to Fort Bragg with a Combat Action Badge, an Army Commendation Medal with V device for valor, and glowing efficiency reports from her chain of command. More importantly, she had gained the combat experience and confidence that would be essential for the challenges ahead. The selection process for sniper training was grueling. Candidates underwent psychological evaluation, advanced marksmanship testing, physical fitness assessments, and interviews with senior non-commissioned officers who had extensive combat experience. Maria was one of only 3 women among the 47 candidates being evaluated, and she could feel the skeptical eyes of instructors and fellow candidates alike. Master Sergeant Thomas Kane, the Corps supervisor, had been a sniper for over 15 years and had served multiple combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He made his position clear during the initial briefing. "I don't care what you look like, where you come from, or what your last name is. This course has one purpose: to train soldiers who can take lives at extended range while operating in hostile territory. If you can't handle that responsibility, both mentally and physically, you don't belong here." The first week consisted primarily of marksmanship fundamentals and equipment familiarization. Students learned to use various rifle systems, optics, and range-finding equipment while mastering the mathematical calculations required for long-range shooting. Maria excelled in these areas, often finishing exercises ahead of schedule and helping other students who were struggling with the concepts. But marksmanship was only one component of sniper training. Students also had to master camouflage and concealment techniques, learn to move undetected across various terrain types, and develop the mental discipline required for extended observation missions. Some of the most challenging exercises involved remaining motionless in uncomfortable positions for hours at a time while maintaining constant vigilance. The psychological aspects of sniper training were perhaps the most difficult for many students. Unlike the chaos of close-quarters combat, snipers had to deal with the intimate nature of killing at a distance, often observing their targets for extended periods before taking action. Instructors emphasized that snipers needed to understand the moral and psychological weight of their actions while maintaining the emotional control necessary to function effectively. Maria found herself drawing heavily on conversations she'd had with her grandfather about the psychological challenges of combat. Roberto had shared stories about soldiers who struggled with guilt and trauma after taking lives, and he had emphasized the importance of having a strong moral foundation and support system. "The hardest battles aren't always against the enemy," he had told her. "Sometimes they're against the doubt and darkness that can grow in your own mind." The first major milestone in the course was the unknown distance test, where students had to accurately engage targets at ranges between 300 and 800 meters without being told the exact distances. Using only their observation skills and mathematical calculations, they had to determine range, account for environmental conditions, and achieve first-round hits on 10 different targets. Maria completed the test with a perfect score, becoming only the second student in the class to achieve that result. More importantly, her time was significantly faster than most other students, demonstrating not only accuracy, but efficiency under pressure. Master Sergeant Kane made note of her performance, but remained outwardly neutral in his assessment. The advanced fieldcraft portion of the course pushed students to their physical and mental limits. Students had to infiltrate designated areas without being detected by opposing force units, establish concealed observation posts, and maintain surveillance for extended periods while gathering intelligence. The exercises were designed to simulate real-world conditions where discovery could mean death. During one particularly challenging exercise, Maria spent 36 hours in a concealed position overlooking a simulated enemy compound. She had to record all personnel movements, identify vehicles and equipment, and maintain constant radio communication with her instructors while remaining completely hidden from roving patrols that were actively searching for student positions. The exercise tested every aspect of her training: physical endurance, mental discipline, camouflage skills, and the ability to function effectively on minimal food and water. As the hours stretched on, Maria found herself entering a state of focused awareness that reminded her of the intense concentration she'd experienced during competitive shooting as a teenager. When the exercise concluded, Maria's observation logs were praised by instructors for their detail and accuracy. She had successfully tracked all target movements, identified several pieces of equipment that other students had missed, and completed the mission without being detected by opposing forces. Her concealment was so effective that instructors had difficulty locating her position even after the exercise ended. "Exceptional work, Vasquez," Master Sergeant Kane told her during the debrief. "You have a natural aptitude for this type of work. But remember, training is one thing, and real-world operations are another. In combat, the stakes are life and death, not just grades and evaluations." As the course progressed, Maria began to establish herself as one of the top performers in her class. Her marksmanship scores were consistently excellent. Her fieldcraft skills were developing rapidly, and she demonstrated the kind of mental toughness that instructors look for in potential snipers. But perhaps most importantly, she was earning the respect of her fellow students and instructors through her professionalism and dedication. The final phase of sniper training involved a comprehensive field exercise that tested all the skills students had learned throughout the course. Working in two-person teams, students had to plan and execute a long-range reconnaissance mission followed by a precision engagement of designated targets. The exercise was conducted over 4 days and 3 nights in terrain similar to what they might encounter in combat zones. Maria was paired with Sergeant First Class Mike Chun, an experienced soldier who had served one previous tour in Afghanistan, but was new to sniper operations. Their mission was to infiltrate a valley complex, establish observation on a simulated enemy camp, and eliminate specific targets while avoiding detection by roving security patrols. The mission planning phase revealed Maria's developing tactical awareness. She studied topographic maps, analyzed weather data, and helped develop infiltration and extraction routes that maximize concealment while providing optimal shooting positions. Her input was valued by Chun, despite his superior rank and experience because of her demonstrated expertise in long-range shooting. The infiltration went smoothly, with the team covering 8 kilometers of rough terrain over 2 nights to reach their objective area. They established a concealed observation post that provided clear lines of sight to the target area while remaining hidden from enemy patrols. For 36 hours, they maintained surveillance, gathering intelligence, and waiting for their designated targets to appear. When the shooting portion of the exercise began, Maria was responsible for the most challenging engagement, a target at 742 meters in crosswind conditions. The shot required precise calculation of bullet drop and wind drift, complicated by the fact that the target would only be exposed for a few seconds. Missing would compromise the mission and potentially endanger friendly forces in a real-world scenario. Maria took her time with the shot, carefully adjusting her scope and controlling her breathing as she had been taught. When the target appeared, she squeezed the trigger with the same smooth motion she had practiced thousands of times over the years. The bullet struck the target dead center, marking a successful engagement that completed their mission objectives. The exercise concluded with a successful extraction, and Maria and Chen returned to base having completed all assigned tasks without being detected by opposing forces. During the final debrief, their performance was praised as one of the best in recent memory, with instructors noting the team's exceptional fieldcraft and marksmanship skills. Master Sergeant Kane approached Maria after the formal debrief was completed. "Congratulations, Sergeant Vasquez," he said. "You successfully completed the Special Operations Target Interdiction course. You're now qualified as a sniper, and frankly, you're one of the best students we've come through here in quite some time." The words carried special meaning coming from Kane, who was known for his high standards and reluctance to offer praise. Maria felt a surge of pride and satisfaction, knowing that she had achieved her goal through years of hard work and dedication. But she also understood that graduating from sniper school was just the beginning. The real test would come when she deployed to combat as a qualified sniper. Over the following weeks, Maria received orders assigning her to the 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, an elite light infantry unit that frequently operated in high-threat environments. The Rangers had a reputation for accepting only the most capable soldiers, and Maria would be one of the first female snipers ever assigned to the regiment. The assignment represented both an opportunity and a challenge that would define the next phase of her military career. Maria's arrival at Fort Benning to join the 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, was met with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The Rangers were an elite unit with a storied history dating back to World War II, and they took immense pride in their reputation as some of the Army's most capable light infantry soldiers. The addition of a female sniper to their ranks was unprecedented, and many Rangers weren't sure what to expect. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Brooks, the battalion commander, called Maria into his office on her first day. Brooks was a career infantry officer who had earned his reputation through multiple combat tours and had the respect of every soldier in the battalion. His assessment of Maria would carry significant weight in determining how she was received by her new unit. Sergeant Vasquez, Brooks began, reviewing her personnel file. Your training records are impressive, and your combat experience in Iraq demonstrates that you can handle yourself in a fight. But the Rangers operate differently than conventional units. We move fast, we hit hard, and we don't leave anyone behind. Are you prepared for that level of intensity? Maria looked Brooks directly in the eye and responded with confidence. Yes, sir. I understand the standards expected of Rangers, and I'm ready to prove myself worthy of wearing the tab. Brooks nodded approvingly. Good answer. You'll be assigned to Alpha Company's sniper section, working under Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He's one of our most experienced snipers and has served multiple tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He'll evaluate your skills and determine how best to integrate you into our operations. Staff Sergeant Carlos Rodriguez had been a Ranger sniper for 8 years and had over 30 confirmed kills during his combat deployments. He was known throughout the regiment for his professionalism and tactical expertise, but he was also known for his brutally honest assessments of new soldiers. His approval would be essential for Maria's success with the Rangers. Their first meeting took place at the battalion's shooting range, where Rodriguez wanted to observe Maria's marksmanship skills firsthand. He set up targets at various distances from 300 to 800 meters and asked Maria to engage them using the M24 sniper weapon system that was standard issue for Ranger snipers. I've read your training records, Rodriguez told her as she prepared her rifle, but I want to see for myself what you can do. Ranges and wind conditions are posted. Take your time and show me what sniper school taught you. Maria methodically engaged each target, taking careful aim and controlling her breathing as she had been taught. Every shot found its mark, with several hitting dead center of the target area. Rodriguez watched through binoculars, taking notes and occasionally asking her to explain her sight adjustments and calculations. After completing the shooting assessment, Rodriguez reviewed Maria's targets and nodded with grudging approval. Your shooting is solid, he admitted, but marksmanship is just one part of being an effective sniper. The real test is how you perform in the field under combat conditions. We'll see how you do during next week's training exercise. The training exercise Rodriguez referenced was a battalion-level operation designed to simulate conditions the Rangers might face during a real-world mission. It involved multiple companies conducting coordinated assaults on various objectives, while sniper teams provided overwatch and long-range support. The exercise would be Maria's first opportunity to work with other Rangers and demonstrate her ability to function as part of the team. Maria spent the week before the exercise studying the unit's standard operating procedures, memorizing call signs and communication protocols, and familiarizing herself with the other members of the sniper section. The section consisted of 6 two-person teams, each composed of sniper and a spotter who worked together to gather intelligence and engage targets as directed by higher headquarters. She was paired with Sergeant Marcus Thompson, a veteran ranger who had served as a spotter on multiple deployments but was relatively new to sniper operations himself. Thompson was initially reserved in his interactions with Maria, clearly uncertain about working with a female teammate, but professional enough to focus on mission requirements. "Look," Thompson told her during one of their pre-mission briefings, "I don't have any problem with you being here if you can do the job. But if we get into a real fight, I need to know that you'll have my back and that you won't freeze up when things get intense." Maria appreciated his directness. "I understand your concerns," she replied, "but my combat record speaks for itself. I've been under fire before, and I've performed well. Give me a chance to prove myself, and I think you'll be satisfied with what you see." The exercise began before dawn on a cold morning in November. Maria and Thompson infiltrated their assigned sector and established an observation post on high ground overlooking the battalion's primary objective. Their mission was to provide intelligence on enemy positions and engage targets of opportunity while avoiding detection by opposing forces. As the morning progressed, Maria demonstrated the skills she had learned during sniper training. She effectively concealed their position, maintained detailed logs of enemy movements, and provided accurate range estimates to targets throughout the area. When the assault began and she was cleared to engage hostile forces, her shots were precise and effective. During one particularly intense moment, Thompson spotted enemy reinforcements approaching the main battle area. The enemy soldiers were using a concealed route that would allow them to flank the assaulting Rangers, potentially causing heavy casualties. The range was over 600 meters, and the targets were moving quickly through broken terrain. "I count 8 enemy moving through the draw at your 2 o'clock, Thompson whispered urgently. "Range 647 meters, wind 3 to 5 mph from a left." Maria quickly acquired the targets and calculated her firing solution. The lead enemy soldier was carrying what appeared to be a light machine gun, making him the highest priority target. She adjusted her scope, controlled her breathing, and fired. The target dropped immediately, and the remaining enemy soldiers took cover, disrupting their advance long enough for the Rangers to reposition and counter the threat. "Excellent shot," Thompson said, his earlier reservations clearly diminishing. "That just saved a lot of our guys from getting hit by surprise." Over the next several hours, Maria successfully engaged multiple targets at various ranges, consistently demonstrating the marksmanship and tactical awareness that had impressed her instructors during training. More importantly, she proved that she could function effectively as part of a team, providing accurate intelligence and following orders precisely while maintaining her composure under pressure. When the exercise concluded, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez conducted detailed debriefs with each sniper team. During Maria's session, he reviewed her performance systematically, addressing both strengths and areas for improvement. His overall assessment was positive, acknowledging her technical proficiency while noting areas where additional experience would be beneficial. "Your shooting is as good as advertised," Rodriguez told her, "and your fieldcraft is developing well. You maintained good communication with your spotter and followed orders precisely. Those are the basics of being an effective sniper, and you've demonstrated competence in all areas." He paused before continuing, "But I want you to understand something important. Being a sniper in the Rangers means more than just hitting targets at long range. You're going to be operating in small teams, often isolated from friendly forces in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Your teammates need to have complete confidence in your abilities and your judgment. Earning that confidence takes time and repeated performance under stress." Rodriguez's words proved to be prophetic. Over the following months, Maria participated in numerous training exercises and gradually earned the respect of her fellow Rangers through consistent performance and unwavering professionalism. She worked hard to master every aspect of her job, from advanced marksmanship techniques to small unit tactics and survival skills. The opportunity to prove herself in combat came in early 2006, when the battalion received deployment orders for Afghanistan. The war in Afghanistan was entering a new phase, with Taliban forces regrouping and launching increasingly sophisticated attacks against coalition forces. Ranger units were being deployed to conduct direct action missions against high-value targets and to support conventional forces in contested areas. Maria's first combat mission as a Ranger sniper took place in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan, near the Pakistani border. Intelligence had identified a Taliban commander who was coordinating attacks against coalition forces from a compound in a remote valley. The mission required a platoon-sized element to infiltrate the area, capture or kill the target, and extract without being detected by enemy forces known to be operating in the region. Maria and Thompson were assigned to provide overwatch for the assault team from a ridgeline approximately 800 meters from the target compound. Their mission was to monitor potential escape routes, engage targets of opportunity, and provide early warning of enemy reinforcements. The success of the mission depended on their ability to maintain observation while remaining undetected. The infiltration took place over 2 nights, with the platoon moving carefully through mountainous terrain to avoid detection by local villagers who might be sympathetic to the Taliban. Maria carried her M24 rifle along with additional ammunition, communications equipment, and survival gear necessary for extended operations in hostile territory. Establishing the observation post required careful selection of terrain that provided good fields of fire while offering concealment from enemy observation. Maria and Thompson spent several hours preparing their position, using natural camouflage and careful positioning to create a hide site that would be virtually invisible to casual observation. As dawn broke over the mountains, Maria began her surveillance of the target compound through her rifle scope. The compound consisted of several buildings surrounded by a stone wall, with guards visible at various positions. Over the next several hours, she documented the movements of personnel, identified weapons and equipment, and relayed intelligence to the assault team preparing for their attack. The mission was scheduled to begin at first light, when the assault team would move into position and begin their approach to the compound. As Maria maintained her watch, she noticed increased activity among the guards, suggesting that they might have detected the approaching Rangers or received warning from other sources. "Overwatch to Alpha 6, she whispered into her radio, addressing the platoon leader. "I'm observing increased activity at the compound. Guards are moving to alert positions and appear to be scanning the surrounding area." "Alpha 6 to Overwatch," came the reply from Lieutenant Morrison, the platoon leader. "Continue observation and report any changes. We're proceeding with the mission as planned." As the assault team moved into their final positions, Maria noticed a guard on the compound's roof raising what appeared to be a radio antenna. If the guard was able to establish communications with other Taliban forces in the area, it could result in reinforcements arriving that would overwhelm the relatively small Ranger element. "Overwatch to Alpha 6, Maria reported urgently. "I have a guard on the roof with communication equipment. He appears to be attempting to establish radio contact. Request permission to engage." There was a brief pause before Lieutenant Morrison responded. "Overwatch, you are cleared to engage. Take the shot." Maria steadied her rifle and acquired the target through her scope. The range was 783 meters, with moderate crosswind conditions that required adjustment for bullet drift. The target was partially concealed behind the roof's parapet, presenting only a small target area. A miss could alert other guards and compromise the entire mission. She controlled her breathing, applied steady rearward pressure on the trigger, and fired. The bullet struck the target's center mass, and he dropped immediately. The suppressed rifle's report was barely audible at the compound, and the other guards showed no indication that they had detected the shot. "Good shot, Overwatch," Lieutenant Morrison confirmed. "Continue observation and engage targets of opportunity." Over the next 20 minutes, Maria engaged 2 additional targets as the assault team moved into position and began their attack on the compound. Her accurate fire eliminated guards who might have interfered with the assault and contributed to the mission's success. The Taliban commander was captured alive along with several associates, and valuable intelligence materials were recovered from the compound. The successful mission marked a turning point in Maria's acceptance within the Ranger community. Her performance under combat conditions demonstrated that she possessed not only the technical skills necessary to be an effective sniper, but also the mental toughness and judgment required for special operations. Word of her performance spread quickly through the battalion, earning her the respect of soldiers who had initially been skeptical about having a woman in their ranks. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez pulled her aside after the mission debrief. "Outstanding work, Vasquez," he said simply. "You performed like a seasoned professional, and your shots made a real difference in the mission's success. You've proven that you belong here." The acknowledgement from Rodriguez meant everything to Maria. She had worked for years to reach this point, overcoming skepticism and doubt through consistent performance and unwavering dedication. But she also understood that this was just the beginning of her journey as a combat sniper, and that each mission would bring new challenges and opportunities to prove herself worthy of the Ranger tab she wore with pride. Over the next 18 months, Maria participated in 47 combat missions across Afghanistan, from the mountainous regions along the Pakistani border to the urban environments of Kabul and Kandahar. Each mission added to her experience and skill level, but more importantly, each successful engagement built her reputation as one of the most effective snipers in the Ranger Regiment. Her kill count grew steadily as she eliminated high-value targets, protected friendly forces, and disrupted enemy operations throughout the theater. By the end of her deployment, she had 43 confirmed kills, making her one of the most lethal snipers in the Army. But Maria measured her success not just in enemy casualties, but in the lives of American soldiers she had helped save through her precise fire and tactical awareness. The mission that would define her career and eventually lead to the confrontation with General Morrison took place in the Helmand province, in a region where Taliban forces had established a significant presence. Intelligence reports indicated that a Taliban commander named Abdul Rahman was using a madrasa as a base for coordinating attacks against coalition forces and local government officials. What made Rahman particularly dangerous was his tactic of using children as human shields and recruiting young boys to plant improvised explosive devices along routes used by coalition forces. Several recent attacks had resulted in civilian casualties, including children who had been coerced into carrying out suicide bombings. The decision was made to eliminate Rahman before he could orchestrate additional attacks. The mission required exceptional precision because of the presence of children and other civilians in and around the target area. Maria and her spotter, now Sergeant First Class Thompson, were positioned on a rooftop approximately 847 meters from the madrasa, with orders to engage Rahman if he presented a clear shot that wouldn't endanger innocent lives. The observation began before dawn, with Maria using her rifle scope and Thompson employing spotting equipment to monitor activity around the target building. For hours, they watched as children came and went from the madrasa along with various adults who could have been teachers, parents, or enemy combatants. Identifying Rahman among the activity required patience and careful observation. "I've got positive identification on Rahman," Thompson whispered after several hours of surveillance. "He's in the doorway of the main building, talking with 2 other adult males. No children in the immediate area." Maria acquired the target through her rifle scope and confirmed the identification. Rahman was a distinctive figure, taller than most Afghans and bearing facial scars that made him easily recognizable from intelligence photographs. He was standing in an open doorway, presenting a clear target at a range that was well within Maria's capabilities. "Range 847 meters, Thompson reported. Wind is calm. No significant drift factors. You have a clear shot." Maria had trained for shots at this range countless times, but the pressure of the real-world situation was immense. A miss could alert Rahman and allow him to escape, potentially leading to more attacks against coalition forces. Worse, a miscalculation could result in civilian casualties that would undermine coalition efforts to win the support of local populations. She controlled her breathing, applied her extensive training in long-range marksmanship, and squeezed the trigger with the same smooth motion she had practiced thousands of times. The bullet traveled for nearly a full second before striking Ramon center mass. He dropped immediately, and Maria watched through her scope as the other men around him scrambled for cover. Confirmed hit on primary target, Thompson reported over the radio. Ramon is down and appears to be dead. The successful elimination of Ramon had immediate tactical benefits, disrupting Taliban operations in the region and sending a message to other commanders about the reach and precision of coalition forces. But for Maria, the shot represented something more personal. It was the culmination of years of training and experience, demonstrating that she had mastered every aspect of her profession. When Maria's deployment ended and she returned to Fort Benning, her combat record spoke for itself. 43 confirmed kills, 0 friendly casualties during missions where she provided sniper support, and consistently high performance ratings from every leader she had served under. She had proven beyond any doubt that gender was irrelevant when it came to combat effectiveness. Her homecoming was marked by a promotion to staff sergeant and assignment as a sniper instructor at the Army Marksmanship Unit. The assignment was both an honor and a responsibility, as she would be training the next generation of military snipers while also serving as a role model for other women considering careers in combat arms fields. The years following her combat deployment were productive ones for Maria. She developed new training curricula for sniper students, contributed to improvements in equipment and tactics, and mentored dozens of soldiers who would go on to serve with distinction in Iraq and Afghanistan. Her reputation grew not just within the Army, but throughout the broader military community. It was during this period of professional success that Maria first encountered General Morrison. The general was visiting Fort Benning to observe sniper training and assess the capabilities of the Army's precision marksman programs. As part of his visit, he attended a briefing where senior instructors presented information about training methods, student performance, and lessons learned from recent combat operations. Maria was selected to present the section on combat applications of sniper tactics, drawing on her extensive experience in Afghanistan to illustrate how training translated to battlefield effectiveness. Her presentation was thorough and professional, covering everything from target selection to risk mitigation in civilian-populated areas. After the formal briefing, General Morrison approached Maria with what appeared to be casual interest. "Sergeant Vasquez," he said, "I've heard impressive things about your combat record. Tell me about your experience as a sniper in Afghanistan." Maria provided a concise summary of her deployment, focusing on mission outcomes and tactical lessons learned rather than personal accomplishments. She mentioned her 43 confirmed kills only in the context of overall mission effectiveness and the lives of coalition forces that had been protected through precision fire. General Morrison listened with apparent interest, but his follow-up questions revealed a skeptical attitude that Maria found troubling. He asked detailed questions about her kill count, seeming to doubt whether a woman could have achieved such results in combat conditions. His tone suggested that he viewed her record with suspicion rather than professional respect. 43 confirmed kills is quite a claim, he said finally. In my experience, snipers tend to exaggerate their accomplishments, especially when trying to build their reputations. Are you certain about these numbers? The question struck Maria like a physical blow. She had spent years proving herself in the most demanding circumstances imaginable, risking her life repeatedly to protect her fellow soldiers and accomplish critical missions. The suggestion that she would fabricate or exaggerate her combat record was not just insulting. It was a fundamental attack on her integrity and professionalism. "Sir," she replied carefully, "every engagement I participated in was documented according to standard procedures. Kill confirmations were verified by spotters, reviewed by unit leadership, and included in official after-action reports. I stand behind the accuracy of my combat record." General Morrison's response made it clear that her explanation hadn't satisfied his concerns. "Perhaps," he said dismissively, "but numbers on paper don't always tell the whole story. Combat is chaotic, and it's easy to claim credit for engagements that might have had multiple contributing factors. The conversation ended awkwardly, with General Morrison moving on to speak with other instructors while Maria struggled to process what had just occurred. She had encountered skepticism before, particularly early in her career, but she thought those days were behind her. The general's attitude suggested that despite her proven track record, some leaders still viewed her gender as more relevant than her achievements. Over the following weeks, Maria learned that General Morrison had been asking questions about her combat record with other personnel at Fort Benning. He seemed particularly interested in verification of her kill count, requesting access to classified after-action reports, and conducting informal interviews with soldiers who had served with her in Afghanistan. The investigation, if it could be called that, was both insulting and potentially damaging to Maria's career. Word spread quickly through the close-knit special operations community that a general officer was questioning the authenticity of her combat record. Some colleagues expressed outrage at the general's actions, while others seemed to view the controversy as confirmation of their own doubts about women in combat roles. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, who had been promoted and was now serving at Fort Bragg, called Maria when he heard about the situation. "This is bullshit," he said bluntly. "I was there for most of your missions, and I can personally verify your performance. Morrison is way out of line, and he's going to regret questioning your record." Rodriguez's support meant a great deal to Maria, but she knew that the situation required a more formal response. She began compiling documentation of every mission she had participated in, gathering statements from soldiers who had served with her, and preparing a comprehensive defense of her combat record. If General Morrison wanted verification, she would provide it in overwhelming detail. The confrontation that would define both their careers came during a high-level briefing at the Pentagon, where senior military leaders were discussing the integration of women into previously closed combat roles. Maria had been selected to participate in the briefing based on her experience as one of the Army's most successful female snipers. General Morrison was among the attendees, and when Maria was introduced and her combat record was mentioned as part of her qualifications, he interrupted the proceedings. "Before we continue," he said loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear, "I think we need to address some questions about Sergeant Vasquez's claimed kill count. 43 confirmed kills seems extraordinarily high for any sniper, particularly one with limited combat experience." The room fell silent as 37 senior military officers realized they were witnessing an unprecedented challenge to a decorated soldier's integrity. Maria felt the eyes of everyone present focused on her, waiting to see how she would respond to such a public questioning of her record. For a moment that seemed to stretch forever, Maria considered her options. She could respond defensively, pointing to her decorations and efficiency reports. She could appeal to the other officers present to defend her record. She could even request a formal investigation to clear her name definitively. Instead, she reached into her folder and pulled out a single photograph, sliding it across the table to General Morrison with the same calm precision she had once used to engage targets at nearly a kilometer's distance. The image showed Abdul Rahman lying motionless in the doorway of the madrasa, taken by surveillance equipment moments after her longest and most challenging shot. "That's target number 43, she said quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the silent room. "Confirmed kill, 847 meters, single shot, Helmand Province." The Taliban commander who'd been orchestrating attacks on school buses filled with children. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the assembled officers before continuing. "Would you like to see the other 42, sir?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and everyone present understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. This wasn't just a confrontation between a general and a sergeant. It was a defining moment in the ongoing evolution of military culture and the role of women in combat. General Morrison stared at the photograph for what seemed like an eternity, his face cycling through various expressions as he realized the magnitude of his error. He had challenged the integrity of one of the Army's most accomplished snipers based on prejudices and assumptions rather than facts and evidence. In doing so, he had not only embarrassed himself, but had also demonstrated the kind of outdated thinking that the military was working to overcome. When he finally looked up from the photograph, General Morrison's earlier confidence had completely disappeared. That won't be necessary, Sergeant," he said quietly, his voice barely audible in the silent room. Maria nodded once, retrieved the photograph, and returned it to her folder. The briefing continued, but everyone present understood that they had just witnessed a moment that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. A female soldier had shut down a two-star general not with anger or defiance, but with the unshakable confidence that comes from proven performance under the most demanding circumstances imaginable. In the years that followed, Maria's career continued to flourish as she advanced through the ranks and took on increasingly responsible positions. General Morrison, meanwhile, found his career effectively ended by the incident, as word spread throughout the military about his ill-conceived challenge to a decorated combat veteran. But for Maria, the confrontation represented something more than personal vindication. It was a symbol of how far women had come in the military and a demonstration that respect must be earned through performance rather than granted based on assumptions about gender, background, or appearance. She had proven that when the stakes were highest and the pressure was greatest, what mattered was not what someone looked like, but what they could accomplish when called upon to serve.